Here we are at the Pima Air Museum, and I surprised many astronauts who used to work out at Dryden yesterday by telling them that the great mystery of what happened to the first of two B-52s used by NASA to drop lifting bodies in the F-15, among other objects, is traced back to right here. Number 8 was retired a couple of years ago after dropping the X-38 and quite a few other planes, and after that one was retired, they brought 003 here. Still see them in video.
I have seen many spaceships with my own eyes in my life, remnants of Mercury, Gemini, Apollo capsules, and all 6 space shuttles. Flying over Tucson on top of NASA's 905, first use with the Enterprise is the shuttle Endeavour on its way to California. All of my pictures of the moon in this presentation were taken during SpaceFest V in Tucson, Arizona 2013. While taking them, several men who had been on the moon and in the space between us were with me. Those same eyes, when on the moon, would actually see the Earth from there in this scale. If Earth were an 8-foot ball, the moon would be a 2-foot ball 238 feet away. And against this scale, the Space Shuttle and ISS barely got 4 inches off the 8-foot ball. We've gone nowhere, yet we've gone so far. The diagrams used to describe a trip to the moon and back in the 60s and even now are a little misleading. If the capsule were to aim for the moon as pictured, the moon would be missed by many degrees and the capsule would be heading away from Earth, possibly for centuries in a cometary orbit around the sun. The moon, after all, is just another satellite of the Earth, a big one. It's 11 times further out than our geosynchronous satellites. And really, it is appearing to orbit backwards, but it's an illusion. The actual path of the Earth to the moon used by all 9 Apollo missions that went there looks more like this. This is also the path taken by NASA's LRO mission, but not by Lacrosse or Grell. Well, this was the way Lacrosse started out until going on a wild detour to line up with the moon's south pole, and as we now know, Grell's mission didn't last very long. Lacrosse was intentionally crashed as well, but LRO is still out there doing more for science than the Apollo missions ever did, and who knows when that mission will end. Walter Cunningham flew with Wally Schirra, who I interviewed in 2002, along with Glenn, Cooper, and Carpenter, and this was my first interview with Cunningham, and it was by far among my favorite. The Apollo capsule was a disgraceful disaster, killing 3 men who were trapped atop a rocket, and the Apollo was redesigned, and it was gone through rigorous testing, and Walter Cunningham and his crew passed the test. No words can convey what it was like to be a boy growing up in Kansas, as 3 astronauts then chose to repeat Walter Cunningham's mission while orbiting the moon. They cheerfully read passages from the Bible, broadcast live to the world by every television network in operation in 1968. I don't think this will ever be repeated by NASA, and the cable channels would probably tune it out anyway. After the successful performance of the newly designed Apollo capsule, a late and over-budget LEM, or Lunar Excursion Module, was tested with the Apollo, and they both worked well, and more importantly, they worked well together. Apollo 10 repeated Apollo 9, but this time around the moon, and the LEM went to 9 miles of the surface, returned, and was jettisoned after crew transfer, and it went into a solar orbit. Astronomer Nick Howes and others are still looking for it, and it's still out there somewhere. Although I was just almost 7 years old, I remember Apollo 11 landing on the moon like it was yesterday. My dad took me outside after me and the rest of the world watched it on TV, and I was frustrated that I couldn't see the astronauts landing as I looked at the moon. Blessed are those who do not see yet believe, my dad told me. and history was being made. In hindsight, the accomplishment really wasn't so much that that men were walking on the moon, but the Delta V from here resulted in a launch pad configuration at rest on the moon. A real miracle had happened. Apollo 12 landed in an interesting spot, one of the most interesting spots on the moon, actually. I talked at length with Richard Gordon, somewhat less with Alan Bean, about what it was like to be there. In all fairness, Alan Bean has expressed himself less in words over time, but more so in his remarkable paintings. Me and everybody else who was 15 years old remembers August 12, 1977 at 10:48 a.m. when Fred Haise lifted the shuttle Enterprise by firing explosive bolts to set it free off the top of a 747, and with that power it conducted an approach and landing test successfully to Rogers Dry Lake Bed in California. And only later would I learn that Fred Haise was also on the Apollo 13 mission. Most of us mostly knew that Jim Lovell was aboard. By all rights, we should have lost Apollo 13. It was headed at thousands of miles per hour away from Earth, the wrong way, when all of a sudden there was a total loss of electrical, life support, and guidance capability. Worse yet, being so close to approaching the moon, there was very little time to use here for the gravity twist to turn Apollo's 13 capsule back to Earth, and everything had to be perfect for the crew to survive. Once again, all went well, prayers were answered, and during SpaceFest V, I finally met Fred Haise in person.